There are nights when the city forgets to breathe, when the snow doesn't just fall, it presses down, quieting everything beneath it. That night in Seattle was one of them. Under a flickering street lamp at a lonely bus stop stood a man named Daniel Cole, 47 years old, former engineer, widower, father. Now, a man the world no longer saw. He held a worn manila folder against his chest, 5 resumes inside, 5 silent rejections. His jacket was thin, his shoes older than the promises he'd made to himself. He watched his breath rise in the freezing air and whispered, maybe tomorrow. But then, the click of heels on ice, through the curtain of falling snow, a woman appeared. Elena Brooks, mid-30s, dressed for a world that didn't include winter. Her hair was damp, her blouse clung to her shoulders, and her hands trembled as she tried to warm them. Daniel looked away. He'd learned to mind his own survival, but the wind cut through her like a blade, and when she shivered, something in him stirred, the part that still believed a small kindness mattered. He hesitated only a moment, then he pulled off his coat and held it out. She blinked, startled. "You don't have to do that." He smiled, tired but gentle. "I've already lost enough tonight. This coat, it's all I have left to give." Elena took it slowly, almost reverently. It smelled faintly of soap and coffee and something like comfort. She whispered, "Thank you." He nodded, folding his arms to stay warm. When the bus finally came, she hesitated at the door. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Daniel half smiled. "Somewhere." He didn't mention that somewhere was the back of a rusted van behind a warehouse. She handed him a business card. "In case you ever need anything." He tucked it into his folder without looking. Then she was gone. And for the first time in months, Daniel felt the faintest warmth. Not from the coat he'd lost, but from the act itself. Later that night, Daniel climbed into his van. He rubbed his hands together, opened a small tin box, and stared at the photograph inside. His wife, Laura, and their daughter, Emily, laughing in the summer light. He whispered, "Good night, you two." Then silence. Across the city, Elena stepped into her penthouse, a palace of glass and chrome. She dropped her heels at the door, still wrapped in Daniel's coat. The warmth lingered. She reached into the pocket, and her fingers brushed something, a folded piece of paper, smudged and creased. Curious, she unfolded it. A child's drawing. 2 stick figures, hand in hand, beneath a crooked sun, one labeled Dad, the other me. At the bottom, "I love you, Daddy." "Emily?" Elena froze. Tears stung her eyes before she understood why. The drawing pulled her back to another winter, another night long ago, when she'd been 12, alone, sitting on the steps of a church waiting for morning. A stranger had found her there, an old man with kind eyes and a worn coat. He had wrapped it around her shoulders and said, "You'll be okay." She never saw him again. But that act of kindness had changed everything. Elena had clawed her way out of foster homes, worked her way through college, built Helix innovations from a borrowed laptop and sleepless nights. Now, she stood in a penthouse filled with success and no warmth. That crayon drawing in her hands felt like a mirror. She whispered, "Who are you, Daniel Cole?" By dawn, she was at her office, skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Her assistant entered when she rang the small bell. "Rachel, I need to find someone." "Of course, ma'am. Who?" "His name is Daniel. I don't have a last name. He was at the bus stop on 6th and Madison last night." Rachel blinked, confused. Elena's tone left no room for questions. Discreetly. For days, her team scoured footage and databases, tracing bus routes, searching shelters. Then Rachel returned with a thin folder. His name is Daniel Cole, former structural engineer, widowed, no recent employment, currently living in a van near the old shipyard. Elena stared at the photo. Tired eyes, calloused hands, quiet dignity. She stood. Get the car. An hour later, the black sedan rolled through the back streets of Tacoma. They stopped beside a warehouse, the air heavy with rust and salt. A van sat half buried in snow. She stepped out, heels crunching on gravel. The door creaked open. Daniel blinked in the daylight, squinting at her silhouette. Elena? Hi, Daniel. He rubbed his arms, embarrassed. What are you doing here? I came to find you. Why? She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Because you reminded me who I used to be. Later that week, Daniel sat stiffly in a sleek conference room 27 floors above the city. Elena handed him a folder. Inside, a contract, a title, Human Values Advisor. He frowned. What is this? A new role. Someone who helps us remember what matters beyond profit. People, empathy, compassion. He shook his head, almost laughing. I'm not qualified. I haven't built anything in years. You built something that night, she said softly. You built hope. Daniel looked away, his voice cracking. I'm just a man trying to survive. Elena leaned forward. You don't need a degree to teach kindness. You live it every day. Silence hung between them, fragile, sacred. Finally, he whispered, I'll think about it. Weeks later, Daniel's hands were once again covered in dust, but this time by choice. He'd accepted the job. On his first day, he faced a room of skeptical managers. He didn't lecture. He simply asked, When was the last time you really looked someone in the eye? No one answered. By the end of that week, people started visiting his small office, an old corner room filled with second-hand plants, warm lamps, and a coffee pot that never seemed empty. He listened to them talk about exhaustion, pressure, fear. And when he spoke, it was never about solutions, just perspective. You're not broken, he told a young programmer one night. You're just tired. And being tired doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've cared for too long without someone caring back. That line spread like wildfire, printed on mugs, pinned to desks. Helix began to change, quietly, beautifully. With Elena's help, Daniel bought a small one-bedroom house on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it had a porch, a garden, and a light that stayed on at night. His daughter, Emily, now a university freshman, moved back in. One evening, over dinner, spaghetti and garlic bread, she looked at him and said, You kept your promise, Dad. He smiled, unable to speak. And as months passed, Elena and Daniel began sharing more than boardrooms. Coffee breaks became evening walks. Work meetings turned into quiet dinners. They talked about loss, about faith, about the strange mercy of second chances. A year later, Helix hosted something new, one warm act. Gone were the banners of profits and product launches. In their place hung white drapes, soft lights, and a single framed relic at center stage, Daniel's old coat. Elena stepped up to the podium. This day isn't about numbers, she said, her voice steady. It's about moments. A year ago, a stranger gave me his only coat. It was worn and frayed, but it carried something money can't buy, kindness. She pulled away the cloth from the frame. Beneath it, a plaque read, One small act of kindness can rewrite a life. Her eyes found Daniel in the crowd. Daniel, would you come up here? Applause filled the hall as he rose, wearing a simple gray suit, pressed, borrowed, but worn with pride. Elena handed him a small envelope. This belongs to you, she said. Inside was the deed to his home, fully paid. Gasps rippled through the audience, but Daniel shook his head gently. I have something for you too. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Worn. Familiar. Inside, a simple silver ring. "You said this coat changed your life," he whispered, "but you changed mine. You gave me back my name, my daughter, and a reason to hope again. If there's anything more valuable than that coat, it's you." Tears streamed down Elena's cheeks. She laughed softly, trembling. "Yes," she said. "Of course, yes." The room erupted in applause. Their wedding wasn't held in a ballroom. It took place at a small red brick community center called Hope Haven, the same place Elena had built in memory of the man who once gave her a coat when she was a child. Children made paper flowers. Volunteers brought mismatched chairs. The cake was baked by one of Daniel's interns, and yet the room glowed brighter than any chandelier. Elena wore a simple white dress. Daniel wore the same gray suit. Emily stood beside him as maid of honor. During the vows, Elena took his hands and said, "Once you gave me warmth when I had none. Tonight, I give you my whole life." There was silence. Then tears, laughter, applause. Outside, under strings of fairy lights, children ran barefoot through the courtyard. Someone took a photo, the couple standing beneath the sign, Hope Haven, his arm around her, and beside them, on an easel, the old coat, framed, worn, immortal. That photo would travel the world, shared, reposted, retold. A symbol of how something as small as kindness can reach through the cold and rewrite everything. Sometimes the smallest act, a coat, a smile, a gentle word, carries more power than we'll ever know. Daniel Cole didn't have much, but he gave what he could. And in doing so, he didn't just change one life. He reminded us all that hope still lives in the simplest human gestures. If this story touched you, share it, because the world could always use one more small act of kindness.